Welcome to today's video. In today's video, I'm going to be doing a 2024 election prediction between Jim Clyburn and Ron DeSantis. I'm going to try to make this pretty quick. I'm pretty stamped for time, or pressed for time. So I'm going to try to make this pretty quick. I'm going to be labeling the likely states over here while I'm doing this. So in Colorado, I think that Clyburn isn't terribly strong for white liberal voters, and I don't think he's particularly strong in the suburbs. I think RDS probably gets less rural turnout, which helps Clyburn, but I think it's probably pretty narrower. I think that in New Mexico, I don't think that Clyburn is very strong with the Hispanic and Latino vote. I think he probably does well enough with oil workers. RDS probably gets less rural turnout to the point where it's probably single digits, yes, but Clyburn winning regardless. Virginia, I think that Clyburn does well enough with the black vote, just well enough in the DC, or not saying well enough in the DC suburbs. I don't think he's particular. I don't think he's a particularly strong suburban candidate, but I think he does well enough in the DC suburbs. Like, I don't think he's gonna do terribly well, but I think his performance is strong enough to the point where obviously he's gonna carry it likely regardless, but I do think that he would do meh in the DC suburbs. New Hampshire, I think that RDS, honestly, actually, this should be. Why did I label that likely? My bad. Maine at large, Clyburn does well enough with the white rural college educated vote. Although I could realistically see that being lean, I would not bet on it. Alaska, I think that we're going to see more and more Native American voters turning out and shifting it to the left. I don't think that Clyburn is like a terribly strong candidate for Native American voters. I think with oil workers, RDS probably does well enough. But I think it is potentially competitive. Texas, I think that RDS gets less rural turnout. Clyburn does worse with Hispanic and Latino voters. I don't think he's a terribly strong candidate in the suburbs. Mississippi, DeSantis gets less rural turnout. Clyburn does better with the black vote. We could realistically see Louisiana being in this category. And in 2028, probably I would say Alabama. South Carolina, Clyburn gets more black turnout. RDS gets less rural turnout. Iowa, I don't think that Clyburn has as much appeal to Obama to Trump voters as DeSantis was. I don't think he has. I think the Democrats in Iowa would probably struggle. I don't think that they have a whole lot of their base in Iowa, which is not a great thing. So there's not much room to improve in terms of turning out their base. A lot of it is swing voters, which obviously is not a good thing if you want to win in a state. Ohio, I think that RDS gets less rural turnout, and I could see him struggling with the white working class. I think Clyburn obviously does pretty well with the black vote. I think that the black share of the electorate in Ohio will continue to decrease, which will hurt Democrats there. For RDS's lean states, he gets Florida and Maine at large, or Maine second. Florida, I think that he's popular enough, and I think that Clyburn struggles enough with Hispanic and Latino voters and older white voters and suburbanites. I don't think it's a case of RDS necessarily honestly, this could be likely. I think he's maybe a bit too unpopular there, but I don't even think this is necessarily a case of RDS being a really strong candidate for the state. I think it's more of Clyburn being a relatively weak candidate. Maine second, or at least for the state. Maine second, I think that Clyburn, that is, does well enough. I think he has enough of the populist appeal. And I think that, honestly, RDS has less of it than Trump, to the point where I could see Clyburn realistically making this relatively competitive. I think it's probably a high lean and honestly potentially likely, but it could be pretty tight. For Clyburn's lean states, he gets Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, and Nebraska second. Minnesota, I think this is actually maybe more competitive than Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. I think it does worse with white liberal voters. I don't think he's terribly strong for the white working class. Wisconsin, I think he does pretty well with the black vote and is decent enough for the white working class. RDS getting less rural turnout. Fairly similar thing in Michigan and Pennsylvania. Wisconsin probably voting farthest to the right. Michigan probably voting farthest to the left. Pennsylvania probably voting in between the two. Nebraska second. I think that this is actually very narrow and potentially could be Till. I think that RDS is better for white liberal voters in cities, whereas Clyburn is not. And I think that RDS is probably, yes, a weak suburban candidate. I think Clyburn is as well, though. Um, I think that for Clyburn's tilt states, he's going to get Nevada, Arizona, North Carolina, and my bad, Georgia was supposed to be lean, so apologies there. Nevada, I think that Clyburn isn't a particularly strong candidate for the Hispanic and Latino vote. I think that he probably struggles there. I think the RDS does well enough with white rural voters, and probably honestly does well enough with Hispanic and Latino voters that I could see him being not particularly strong with Hispanic and Latino voters, but I could see him doing well enough to make it tilt, although this could definitely be a low lean. Arizona, Clyburn does worse for Hispanic and Latino voters, but probably does well enough with traditional conservative suburbanites. I could see this ranging in like a whole bunch of different ways. I could see this being lean D. I could honestly see this being like a 4-point margin of victory for RDS. It's kind of all over the place. So bear that in mind. I think that realistically, this could be like. I think that I will say this. I think that RDS would be more likely to carry this by like 4 points than Clyburn. I don't think that Clyburn would carry it by 4 points. But I think that at this point, Clyburn is maybe more likely to carry it. It's really hard, and it's honestly probably a toss-up. Georgia, RDS gets less rural turnout. Clyburn is much better with the black vote. This could realistically be likely probably 4 points, I would think, ish. 3, 4, 5-point margin of victory for Clyburn. I could realistically see him carrying it by like 5.5-ish. North Carolina, I think the RDS gets less rural turnout and does worse for the white working class. Clyburn does better with the black vote and does better with the white working class. I think that by 2028, this is probably lean, maybe even likely blue, but for now, I'm going to give it to Clyburn tilt. So yeah, by the way, I mean, like, it's probably a high tilt. I don't know. I mean, like, RDS is honestly pretty strong for white rural voters. I think against Trump, I don't think that North Carolina is at the point where it does go blue yet. I think it comes close, but I think that at this point it would take a matchup like this where it's a relatively weak candidate for the state, or not weak, but a not as strong as Trump candidate for the state versus a much stronger candidate than Biden for the state. I think a lot of people, like, I think it's very Arizona-esque, except for sort of flipped. A lot of people, well, not really on election Twitter, but it's almost become like a meme, but actually it kind of has. But in Arizona, I think some people tend to underestimate Republicans in Arizona, or some people, a lot of people on election Twitter, obviously it's become sort of a meme. But North Carolina, I think that people can kind of overestimate Democrats there, or overestimate how well the Democrats will do. I think that it's very, I think it's still a relatively conservative state. Like, Trump won it by a lean margin. Biden was a relatively strong candidate for the state. But I think that in this scenario, it does go tilt. By 2028, this is probably Georgia levels, like, margin of victory. I don't think that Democrats will come out carrying it, like, by a lean margin of victory. I think it's probably gonna see a very similar to Georgia, like, movement where it's like a lean R state and then kind of, like, finally flips and then it starts to really shift to the left, and we see Democrats carrying it by high lean margins. For now, I'm going to give this to Clyburn tilt, though. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like below. Stay tuned for my next video. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Please comment your suggestions down below, and I hope to see you all in my next video. Bye!